What's going on, everyone? Video 18. This video is, Hey Reddit, what's the strangest coincidence you've ever personally experienced? Posted by Rich Cauliflower. First one. When I was a kid, around 13, I played a lot of a video game called Diablo 2. I love that game. I started a clan with a few people I'd met on the internet, and we played every day. At some point, we were helping some random person, and he asked to join. We thought he was nice enough, so we let him in. As part of this clan, we had a shared account we used to store game items for each other. After about a month of playing, this new guy goes in and changes the password, steals the account, and defriends everyone. Completely disappears off the map with all our stuff. Fast forward a year later, and my family moves to Texas, and it's my first day at school. I'm sitting in algebra class talking to the person in the seat next to me, and he mentions he plays Diablo. I said me too, and that I ran a clan and everything. I asked his username, and it was him. 2,000 miles away from where I first virtually met this guy, he's sitting next to me in math class. When I told him mine, his face went into a total shock and he didn't know how to respond. It was awkward for sure. Ended up telling him I didn't care and was over it, but let's just say, didn't end up becoming friends. In freshman physics, I became friends with a Japanese kid next to me. After a while, he was helping me with my Japanese homework. Did really well after that, by the way. But after that class, we kind of drifted apart. Fast forward 2 years, where I'm an exchange student in Japan over the summer and doing some sightseeing in Kyoto after the program. I'm crossing the street in Kyoto and I hear my name being called out. I look around and there he is. Thousands of miles apart, we meet again. We got some drinks and good food together. It was a blast. No, his hometown was not Kyoto. He was also doing sightseeing while home for the summer. I met a Canadian guy while on holiday in South America, and we ended up going sightseeing together. At the end of the day, a person behind us tapped him on the shoulder and asked if the scar behind his ear was from cancer surgery. They got talking. Turns out they were from the same small town in Canada, had the same type of brain cancer, and had been operated on by the same surgeon. Started dating this girl a few weeks ago. We get to talking about where we live, etc. She lives in not only the same building, but exact same apartment I lived in 2 years ago. It was so fucking bizarre walking into my old apartment that I never thought I would see again. What are the odds? When I was 18, I lived in a town a very long ways away from where I ended up moving. I struck up a friendship with this guy from work in that town. We play Halo, watch movies, etc., and he was awesome. I ended up moving suddenly due to a family emergency and never got his contact information. I didn't even remember his name a decade later, but I thought of him often as he was an awesome guy through all the years. 11 years later, I'm working at my job, carpooling with someone from my training class, and one night he asked me if I mind his roommate being in the car as he was going to take the car after we got off of work and use it for the night. He introduced me, I turn around, and in the back seat is the guy from the town a very long ways away. We reconnected immediately and now live together. He's my best friend for sure and the godfather to my children. My sister, Emily, was on a ski lift in New Mexico when some younger girl across from her asked if her name was Emily. Apparently, the stranger, who kind of looked similar but underage, had found her lost ID the year prior and had been using it for a year to buy alcohol. After this blew up, I texted my sister, who reminds me it was weirder. She was later hiking with friends for 17 hours. They got tired, thumbed for a hitchhike, and got picked up by this girl's twin. I used to get 2 buses home from work. I got off the first one having left my phone and keys on the front seat of the bus without realizing. Got on the second bus, went to my favored front seat, and my possessions that I didn't know were missing were waiting for me. The bus had changed driver and route. Still freaks me out to this day. Went to college, met a cute girl. Where did you go to high school, she asked. You've never heard of it, I reply. I grew up in a town of 1,200 people, graduated in a class of about 90. Try me, she says. And that was the beginning of finding out that not only had she heard of it, she had almost attended it because her family had lived in one of the neighboring towns very briefly when she was growing up. We shared dozens of mutual friends and had apparently spent our young lives narrowly missing each other. Later, after we started dating, we learned that one of our mutual friends had been trying to set us up with each other for years. She was overwhelmed with laughter when she saw that we were finally together, completely without her involvement. I asked her to marry me. She said yes. We went out to dinner with our parents so they could finally meet. Her folks arrive at the restaurant and see mine. Her mom goes, "Oh, hey," my dad's name. "So this is your son, huh?" They had been co-workers years ago. Of course. We've been married for 11 years now. Got a good thing going. We intend to keep it. In grade 10 English class, the teacher didn't have anything planned for us to do, and it was close to the end of the year, I guess. So she goes to the big cupboard in the corner and pulls out a stack of copies. It's examples of successful essays written during the final exam, so we can learn what a good one looks like and how to build a narrative, etc. The topic of these was what was the most pivotal moment of your life. There's 3 examples, ranging in proficiency. We read through the first 2, and I volunteered to read the last one aloud. I start reading, and I stop. The essay was about me. My big sister had gotten a really good mark 6 years earlier on her final exam essay, which she wrote about the day I was born. I got pretty emotional about that one. When I was a kid, while hiking with my dad, I was babbling and said, "The teacher told us if you speak too much, a fly will get in your mouth." In the exact moment, a fly flew into my mouth. Told this story elsewhere, but I'm making you all read it again. Was at a convention. There were only a few people in the room. My friend and I wanted an autograph from a voice actor. He started singing in his character voice. There were 2 random guys next to me. One pulled out a video camera to record it. Years later, my husband and I are talking with friends, and the convention comes up. The guy with the video camera was my husband. I also took a picture later that day of the crowds, and he is in that picture. I stood next to my husband years before I met him. I was sitting in a restaurant about 200 miles away, or miles from where I lived, telling my mother, who was visiting from a different country, about a trip I had to another country about 6,000 miles away with a work colleague. And the lady at the table next to us leans over and says, "I think you're talking about my son." Turns out I was sitting next to my colleague's parents while showing my mom pictures of our trip. The person who sits next to me at work copies everything I do, except she has no way of knowing. I wear a blue sweater, she wears a blue sweater. I bring leftover spaghetti, she brings leftover spaghetti. It is so weird I almost hate her. I've mentioned this before on Reddit, so I'll just copy/paste, but definitely the shadow dick incident. What? One night in university, I was fooling around with my then girlfriend and noticed that the brightness of the TV caused us to cast distinct shadows on the wall behind us. Being 19 and a fool, I took this opportunity to take a pic, using Snapchat, of the shadow of my erect penis made on the wall and sent that pic to my best friend. I thought it would elicit an interesting reaction, but could not have been prepared for what was next. You see, on Snapchat, you can see when someone receives your message as well as when it's opened. So as my message is sending, still unopened by him, I receive a Snapchat from my best friend. I open it, and lo and behold, what do I see? A shadow dick snap. This man decided at the exact same time that I did to send an identical pic of his dick shadow on the wall. Both our girlfriends were confused, thinking it was some inside joke, when in reality, we had never spoken or sent shadow dick pics ever before. Why are you sending dick pics to your buddy? It's highly questionable. But anyway, I don't know if this counts as a coincidence because it might be influenced by the commonalities between us, but I was reading through one of my dad's old journals and found out that he and I share the same reoccurring nightmare. The details are basically identical, even down to the frequency of it happening, once a month. It's very trippy. Just to answer some facts, as far as I can remember, I never discussed this with my dad. I felt okay pursuing his journal because he's been dead for quite a while now, before his time, but having nothing in common with the details of the dream. It was suicide. I guess you can make all of that what you will. I've detailed the dream itself below. I don't know why I included that, because I don't have the details. Sorry, guys. 1 year I got a roommate through Craigslist. The guy was weird for sure, but good-natured and paid rent. Anyway, after about 2 months of living with him, my cousin comes over to hang. I introduce the two, and my cousin, in the most chill voice ever, says, "Nah, man, we know each other." Turns out they were college roommates 5 years earlier in another state. When I was 1 year old, we moved to a city some 500 kilometers away from where I was born. 15 years later, my dad decided to put me in a boarding school in the area of that first city, because he went there too. I got randomly put in a room with 2 other guys, which one of them is still my best friend today. When I first visited that friend at his home, I discovered that he not only lived in the same city as we did, not much of a coincidence as it's the only major city in that area, but in the same fucking house. Of course I couldn't remember our old house, so I called my father to confirm that it's the same address, and it turns out that he very briefly knew my friend's family from selling the house. I have an uncommon last name and a not too common first name. I was in the hospital for surgery, and the person in the next room was there for the same surgery. Come to find out that we were second cousins and never knew that the other existed. He had the same name as me, and his wife had the same name as my wife. Alright, I'm going to call it quits after this one. If you guys enjoyed the video, comment, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.